It feels like when we're looking at budgets right now, a lot of our clients are telling us, "Hey, Alan, we're eating the same way that we were 3, 4, 5 years ago now, when we were spending $2,000 a month on our overall budget. And now all of a sudden, these food budgets that we are seeing on a daily basis, they're going to $4,000 to $5,000 a month here on food, right? And the good news the bad news is that's a ton of money, right? 45 to $50,000 a year on food. That is a ton of money on food. The good news is it's actually the easiest line item in your budget to really reduce, right? When you look at an overall budget, there's not that many things that we can actually reduce. Your heating bill is what it is. The Wi-Fi is there and it's really hard to function in society without it, right? We need a car to get places in most places in America, right? So when we're looking at your budget, well, the two areas that we find that are the easiest places to actually shred excess spending are going to be shopping and food. And food by far is the biggest one because truthfully, shopping has a lot to do with just necessary things that we need. Of course, there's like clothes shopping and fun shopping, right? But realistically, when we're looking at a shopping budget, most of the stuff is actually from Amazon. And a lot of that stuff is stuff that you need around the house that you absolutely, they're what we call absolutely necessary here on that. So when we're looking at budgeting with our clients, you don't have to think about really tracking everything within a budget. You really just need to focus in on one area of that budget. I don't know if it makes sense for you to call and haggle down your cell phone bill. Maybe it does. Maybe you enjoy that, right? And there's some really good material out there by master negotiators on how to do that. Maybe it makes sense to go through and keep your AC temperature down to 65 during the winter and up to 75 during the summer. My father-in-law sure as heck likes doing that. And I tell you, we roast there during the summer. So I personally don't think it's worth it to save a couple bucks. But the one area that can really explode and that can really get out of control is the food budget. And once again, we're seeing clients that used to spend 2 grand a month, now spending 4 to 5. Now, part of that is because they have kids that are growing, right? So we've got more mouths to feed. But the largest part here is that we have a food crisis on our nation here. I say food crisis, that's probably too harsh of a term there because there's some nations that really have food crises. But when you look at where we are as a nation right now with food, there's a lot of bad stuff going on. So let's talk first of all, the bird flu. Bird flu has wiped out a ton of egg-laying chickens. So now all of a sudden, if you go to Waffle House, which is big here in Atlanta, if you go to Waffle House, you're gonna be paying 50 cents extra per egg. That's nuts. That's ridiculous, right? And so if you're going to the grocery store right now, the last couple of weeks, it's almost impossible to find eggs anywhere. We've been trying to search for eggs. We finally found some at Costco, but you know how Costco has just tons of eggs at all times. They were down to a carton or two, and they typically have like 10 cartons in there, right? So when we're looking at eggs here, those are going to only get a little bit more expensive here because it takes a while to have new chickens to get them where they're laying eggs every single day. They just don't pop out laying eggs, right? So now all of a sudden we got to grow them and feed them and get them healthy so that they can lay eggs. So we're going to have a little bit of an egg shortage. Well, eggs go into a lot of our ingredients, right? Eggs go into a lot of our food. What also happens is that chicken flu is also going to affect the actual cost of chickens, right? When we go buy some chicken meat, right, it's probably going to affect the price of that chicken. That's my logic. I haven't actually researched that. I don't think if there's less chickens alive, they're going to cost more. Anyways, we're also having a shortage on cattle, and this actually goes back to a long time where there was too much cattle, right? And now all of a sudden there's not enough cattle. And frankly, red meat's having a resurgence here, right? Remember when red meat wasn't a healthy meat to eat? Now all of a sudden we have all these Instagram carnivore dieters telling us to only eat ribeye steaks for lunch, right? So the truth is, it's very nutritious and nutritionally dense food, right? And so now all of a sudden, cattle is really in. Steaks are really in. They're having a moment. So now all of a sudden, farmers are having trouble keeping up with that demand. And the challenge that they have is, okay, we have this cattle here. We could either have it reproduce to make more cattle, or we can send it to slaughter and make a lot of money. Well, what do we need if we're going to reproduce and have more cattle? Well, we need money, right? So we kind of, we need this cow to reproduce. We also need to sell it to get money to raise the next cattle. So it's a real big predicament within the cattle industry right now. It's going to take years and years to fix on that front, right? So we're looking at overall food here. There's a lot of reasons that we are experiencing inflation in food. One of them is what we just went over. The other one is just transportation costs in general are going up. But the biggest one, in my opinion, is wage pressure. And that's where restaurants come in, right? Because the cost of a steak that a restaurant pays and the cost that we would pay probably aren't that different. They probably get a discount because they're buying in bulk, right? But in general, that's not the problem. The problem is, hey, at the restaurant, we're having somebody cook it. We're having somebody serve it to us, right? And those people are in a building that rent's gone up on, and they're having to pay insurance on that keeps on going up on them from general liability insurance to maybe a liquor liability if they sell alcohol to workers' comp. They have to buy all this insurance just to be able to be safe, right? And to be compliant and be legal. And they're having to pay fees to run this business, right? So all of that is wrapped up into the price of this steak, not to mention their utilities that have gone up on all of us, right? And so when we're looking at, okay, do we cook a steak at home or do we go get it, right? In my opinion, it needs to be a damn good steak for us to go get it. So I do have favorite steakhouses. Shout out to my favorite steak in Atlanta right now is Palo Santo on the west side. Unbelievable 32-ounce ribeye steak. Yes, it's $140, but I need you to realize that $140 for 32-ounce bone-in ribeye here is actually not that bad. So like I like if I'm going to go out to eat, I like to go to a really nice place once a quarter maybe, right? Where I think this is starting to catch up to us here is that Chick-fil-A lunch used to be 7.50 and now I feel like it's $12, right? A salad used to be $12 and now I feel like it's 18 or 20, right? A pork chop at dinner used to be 18 to $20 and now I feel like it's 30, right? And studies would show that yes, inflation has happened. Restaurant prices are about 5% more this year than they were at this time last year. So I'm filming this in February of 2025. So February of 2024, 5% less, right? Well, it's why? What's happened? Inflation has simmered, right? Inflation's been around 2. Why are restaurant prices around 5? Meanwhile, grocery prices have gone up about 1.3. So they're actually a little bit less than overall inflation on here, right? So long story short, inflationary prices on the actual food they're buying, the transportation to get it there, the wage pressure, and then everything else that that business has to pay for in order to get that steak on the table is making restaurant prices being really expensive. And then all of a sudden we have the tip on top of there, right? So well, the end effect is this. What does this mean? The end effect is our clients are spending more money on food, probably about 100% more than they were 5 years ago, probably going from 2 to 4 grand or so on average from what I'm seeing, right? And that means that they have 2 grand less to send us to invest, right? 2 grand less to save, 2 grand less to go do other things that they want to go do, right? And so inflation, particularly around food, has really eaten into a lot of our clients' budgets here. And that's causing them not to be able to save and invest for the future. So, what do we do about it? How do we tackle this? And there is a way to tackle this. To be clear, it's very hard to get away from general inflation. It's just challenging. To get away from inflation is very challenging. And we're not going to be able to do it because I don't think we're going to move out of this country. And guess what? Other countries have inflation too, right? So, on the other hand, I also don't think it's reasonable to go buy a farm and raise your own chickens. I was talking to my buddy who is on his own farm and he started a chicken coop. And after the chicken coop and all the feed and the chickens and raising them, and half of them die eventually. each chicken would have to lay an egg, a single egg, every single day for the next 3 years to break even, right? So I'm not certain that going and raising our own food, maybe vegetables are a little bit better of a deal there. At least with vegetables, you know that they're not putting just total crap on your food, right? You know what's going on your food. So there might be some cost savings there eventually, long term. But today, what I want to talk to you is what can we start doing right now? What can we start doing right now to get money back in your pocket and stop spending on food, right? And it comes down to two things: buy in bulk, cook in bulk. Buy in bulk, cook in bulk. I realize that that's not fun. I realize it, right? It's not fun. I would much rather go out to eat, have somebody serve us, try different restaurants. Yes, come on. That was a ton of fun. Remember when we used to go spend like $50 per person at brunch? Do y'all remember those days? And now breakfast and brunch places, they're shutting down left and right where I'm at. Why? Because when you start adding in food pressure, you get student loans coming back in, right? All of a sudden, the rent's skyrocketing. God forbid you got a new mortgage at a high interest rate, right? All of a sudden, brunch is just not where people are going to spend their money. So all of a sudden, these breakfast places that used to bank on bottomless mimosas here are just not doing that anymore, right? So we're not doing that good anymore. So we're seeing them go to the wayside, unfortunately for them, right? But that needed to happen. For budgeting purposes, like it was insane to spend that much money on brunch back in the day, and it certainly would be even more so now, right? So what we've got to do, guys, is we've got to find a way to make cooking at home easy and fun. Because what we need to do is buy in bulk, cook in bulk, and either freeze or eat leftovers, right? So I'm going to take you through just what my wife and I do, right? Because not only do we need to do it, but we need to do it healthy, right? Yeah, yeah. This isn't, at no point in time is it worth to sacrifice your health for more money. At no point, because you're going to pay for it monetarily later on. And even worse, you're going to pay for it in your life later on. So at no point in time do we want to sacrifice health for money. That's just not going to work, right? So when we're buying, and it doesn't have to be from Costco, y'all. It can be from Publix. It doesn't matter, right? But in general, what we want to do is we want to cook enough food that night to be able to have lunch someday at some point in the future. Okay. All right. Because we really don't want to buy our lunch. We don't want to go eat out for lunch. We really don't want to go eat out for dinner. Maybe once a week, guys. Maybe once a week for each, right? Once a week for dinner, once a week for lunch. Once again, I realize this isn't a fun conversation, but it's a world that we live in. And the easiest way for you to save more money is take your food budget from 4 grand to 3 grand. And I think you could do that immediately if you just did this. Cook dinner at home, okay? And then, yeah, and have that for leftovers, for a couple of meals next week, right? So what we're trying to do is get the cost per meal down. That dinner to cook might be $20. Okay. Right. Let's say it's spaghetti. So you go out there, you get your ground beef, whatever, right? You get your spaghetti sauce. That's $8 because we're going to go get Rao's, the good kind, right? So next thing you know, we're at $20. All right. Maybe let's throw in a side salad with it. So that's $25 or so. All right. Well, ideally we have a pound of beef and it's going to feed you, your wife, your two kids, right? And then hopefully you have enough for one person's lunch the next day, right? Well, we just got it down to about $5 per meal. That's the kind of the ticker, right? So that's a meal that we do. That's a meal we do. Now let's take the same kind of meat here. We can do ground turkey for this one just to mix it up here. We can go do taco night, right? Put a can of corn in there. Oh my gosh, put some pineapple in there. You know when it says to mix the seasoning, the taco seasoning with water? Don't do that. Put it in the pineapple mix. Put in the pineapple juice, right? And mix that together. It's going to get this really sweet sauce. And if you get a good seasoning like we've got, and get a little spice to it as well, right? Put a little Mexican cheese on top of it. Serve it over cauliflower rice to be super healthy right there. You're going to have a protein-packed meal. And once again, it's going to feed an army here. This feeds a lot of people there. So let's say it's going to feed 4 people that night, and let's say 2 lunches the next day, right? So we're going to get another six meals out of this at about $5 a meal, roughly, right? So if we want to go even a little bit cheaper, I personally love doing a whole chicken. I realize that, guys, by the way, I'm not a chef, but this is a hobby of mine. But I love a whole chicken. All right. So when I'm cooking a whole chicken, guys, First thing I want to do, don't go get the chicken breast. Don't go get the chicken thighs. Don't go get the chicken wings. Get the entire chicken. It's so much cheaper. You can go get two young chickens at Costco right now for 14 bucks, right? You can go get an organic one for about $18, right? But here's the deal. When I'm cooking chicken, we like to really season it up well with Italian seasoning, get some good herbs, get a little salt on there too. Personally, if you want to take it to the next level, I like to do something called spatchcocking the chicken, which is cutting the spine out of the chicken so that we can fillet it. It's going to cook a lot more tender when we do that, a lot quicker, a lot more tender. You only need an hour in the oven with whole chicken, guys. An hour, maybe even less. Cook it somewhere right around 155. It'll reach 165 as we let it go. We certainly don't want to go over. It's going to dry it out, but we're going to cut that up. We're going to have meals for days on that. That whole chicken, well, particularly if we got a big family, we can go get the two whole chickens, same exact thing. That whole chicken is going to feed you probably 6 meals or so, and it's going to cost you 15 bucks, I say, right? Put it with some carrots there, roast some carrots in the oven with it. Oh my gosh, right? So, anyway, I'm not a chef, but I am here to tell you. Cooking at home, can be fun. Cooking at home can be therapeutic. Cooking for home is definitely healthier. Cooking for home can save you thousands of dollars a month. Okay. All right. Here's the deal. I don't want you to stop eating out. I don't. But I want you to stop doing what we call lazy eating. I want to cut out lazy eating. What is lazy eating? Lazy eating is when you go eat because there's nothing in the fridge at home. Lazy eating is when you DoorDash because you're tired, you're frustrated, and you're really craving something that's fatty and salty and good. And believe me, I've been there and I've done that. Okay. But I just want to let you know there's no cheap way to DoorDash. There's no cheap way to Uber Eats. There just isn't. It's all expensive. And now not only are you paying typically higher prices for the meals, but now you got to tip a driver to bring it to you. And then when it gets to it, it's not even hot, you know? And so here's the deal, y'all. When we can eliminate lazy eating. Oh shoot, I forgot my lunch at work. I need to go down to the cafeteria to get a salad or something like that, right? When we can eliminate those days on Friday or the days on Thursday night where you're just not up to cooking, right? If we can have something easy in the kitchen, easy in the fridge, that we can pull out and make real quick, it's going to save you a lot of money, a lot of calories here, a lot of overall health benefits too. And it's going to be just as tasty, if not tastier, right? So one of the emergency meals that we like to have in the fridge at all time, something called Kevin's. Kevin's is really nice sous vide organic chicken with the really good sauces. They got probably 12 different sauces, so you can figure out which one you like. I'm not going to say it's cheap, right? But I will say this, it's a lot cheaper than eating out or ordering in. Right. So it's an emergency meal. Hey, we are tired. We're exhausted. We ran out of time. I don't have time to cook a spatchcock chicken in the oven for an hour, Alan. Okay. Well, then let's go and let's pull out that Kevin's right there. And it's going to take us 5 to 10 minutes to make. And once again, I like to serve it over cauliflower rice that we just heat up in the oven in the microwave for a couple minutes, and we're off to the races. We have a really good, healthy dinner, high protein, low carb, low sugar dinner there, organic. That will feed a good family, right? So that one, the Costco ones are a lot larger than the ones that you're going to find at Publix, and I like cooking in bulk so I can have enough food for a lunch the next day. So I like getting those the bigger ones there, right? Okay, so my beef is not with eating out. All right. And by the way, I will say I'm a bit biased. I love to cook. I feel like I'm pretty good at it, right? I love to experiment in the kitchen. So I realize that you're listening to this and you might not like that, right? But start the journey. I didn't finish there. I didn't, right. This is like 15 years in the making here on this. We didn't, that taco recipe we've been refining for 15 years now, right? And I'm just giving it to you. The amount of value you're getting on this podcast is stunning. I'm giving you my taco recipe. It's unbelievable. And by my taco recipe, it's really my wife's. She's the one that really created it, and she's great at it. So here's the deal. I'm not against eating out. I'm against lazy eating. I love a good dinner out. A good dinner out at a great restaurant. A restaurant that does things that I cannot do at home. A restaurant that does things differently than I would ever think about doing. That is something that I am all about. So I mentioned this restaurant earlier. I want to go with two high-end restaurants that I love. Palo Santo. Palo Santo on the west end here. Oh my God, it's so good. They hang cauliflower, a head of cauliflower above their wood-fired grill. Okay, above their wood-fired grill for 10 hours before they serve it. It's something that's like at 10 a.m. in the morning, like 6 hours, you name it. It's just absorbing all of this smoke from the wood-fired grill before they serve it. It's delicious. I can't do that. I'm not, maybe I can. I'm not going to, right? They have a 32-ounce bone-in ribeye there. Okay. Cooked at like 1,000-degree temperature. So that the sear on is just impeccable, right? It's really hard for me to replicate that, right? And I'm pretty good at steak, right? So those are experiences that I love. Hey, let's go really high end. Marcel's Steakhouse. Let me tell you something. That's a second mortgage right there, right? That is not cheap, right? But they have some of the best service in the entire state. It's almost annoying. It's almost like, hey, I'm having to talk to my spouse here because I haven't had somebody check on me in the last 10 seconds, right? And but that's what you're going for, right? And so I'm not against eating out. I just want it to be an experience. I don't want it to be an afterthought. I don't want it to be a convenience. I want it to be an experience with other people that you love, friends that you enjoy being around, your spouse, and just celebrating your marriage and your kids, or whatever it is. I want it to be an experience, right? I don't want it to be out of laziness, out of fatigue, out of necessity, out of convenience. Those are the things that really stack up over time in a budget there. Right. So let's wrap this up, guys. In general, we got to understand the world that we live in is so different than any world that anybody has ever lived in. Okay, since the beginning of time. That the last 5 years, I would hope that all of our chiropractors out there that their business is just tearing it up because I tell you what, I've been spinning my head so fast. I'm gonna have a crick in my neck off of all the news that we're getting on a daily basis, right? And the biggest thing that's holding us back personally is not where the stock market is or where it's going to be. It's not the economy. It's not any politics. It's inflation. That's what's hurting us. That's what's hurting our wallets and it's affecting our lives, right? And we've got to understand that we are at war. We are at war with inflation and we have to be able to adapt. Okay. It's a different war than we've experienced in the past. It's a challenge. It's a different challenge than anybody in my lifetime has had to experience. Maybe somebody who's growing up in the late 70s, early 80s has some experience with it. But I don't think it's going away anywhere. I do not think inflation is going away. As a matter of fact, I don't think the prices are going to drop. I'm very afraid of a second wave of inflation here. If you go back to the Jimmy Carter era, late 70s, early 80s, there was two bouts of inflation. The first bout of inflation, a lot of businesses were able to survive. A lot of people were able to get through. It was when they thought that inflation was done, that they had suffocated it, that they got aggressive again. When they got aggressive, inflation came roaring back much worse than it did the first time. And that's when businesses went under. That's when people went bankrupt. That's when we had really big problems. And I am afraid of that right there. So if we are going to be living in a world where we don't know this, but where prices most likely are not going to go down, where they're probably going to continue to go up here, if we're going to be living in this world, then we really need to find a way to adapt here on this, right? So we need to find a way to adapt. And the best way that we can adapt right now, from what I'm seeing, is focusing in on one area, not your budget, not your entire budget, one area. One area is food prices. Once again, let's eat out. Give yourself one dinner and one lunch a week. Okay. One dinner and one lunch a week. I think that's a fair compromise there. Every other meal, we want to be trying to get the cost per meal down to about $5 per meal, right? So it's $20. So $20 a night is four meals, right? Two dinners and two lunches, right? And so if we can get that down to $5 per meal, it's going to put a lot of extra money back into your checking account that eventually we can go and either go spend on other things that you want to do, like travel or go to a game or something of that nature, or maybe even just repurpose that to go to a really good barbecue joint that you've been wanting to go to with your friends, you name it, right? So maybe we just repurpose those dollars, or maybe we start investing in the future. Because here's the deal, y'all. I need you guys to understand something. You're going to hear me repeat this a lot. This is from The Psychology of Money. I love this so much. It's a great book. But basically, when we decide not to go buy that meal, what we're really doing is we're buying freedom for the next for the future, to be able to do something else with those dollars, right? When we decide to go not buy a new car, a new suit, a new house, a new a dinner out, a trip. When we decide to not do that, initially we take in a victim mentality. Poor me, poor, oh my, I can't go do that, right? The truth is that that's coming from this sense of lack. Realistically, we need to change that lack to a gain. Because when you decide not to go buy that new car, that new house, that new suit, that trip, whatever it is, what you're really doing is you're buying freedom for the future. You're buying the freedom to go do other things that you want to do. And when you go and when you have that freedom, it's going to give you this other sense of empowerment here. That's going to be a lot better feeling than what you would get from that new suit, that new car, that new home. Right. So, hey, hopefully this was good today. Once again, buy in bulk, cook in bulk, no lazy eating. Always have emergency meals in the fridge, right? Eat out one lunch, one dinner, you'll be a-okay. This is a one area that you have thousands of dollars that you could save on a monthly basis. Let's make it happen.